Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to this Shabbat evening service. We are getting closer to more in-person events, but for now, we are still going to do some things online like this. So, welcome to this. Our service begins tonight on page 120 as we light our Sabbath candles. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot and commands us to kindle the lights of Shabbat. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lend our hearts to take the words we shall speak. Lead us to take the words that we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this holy space, and all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. My computer says my connection. I hope our people on YouTube are hanging in there with us. But in any, we're going to continue with L'chad Dodi, welcoming in the Sabbath bride on page 138 and 139. We sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. Verse 9, I invite you, if you're able, to rise and face the direction that Shabbat comes to you from. In our synagogue, that would be the front doors. Maybe in your home, that's your front door, or maybe it's the window, if you're like me and don't really have a door to the outside. Maybe it's still your screen where you're watching this. Maybe it's your own beloved sitting beside you. L'chad Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. L'chad Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. L'chad Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. L'chad Dodi likrat kala, Shabbat nekabela. Ta'amor v'zachor b'dibor echad, v'yishmiyanu el hamyokad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, l'shemo tiferet v'litila. L'chad Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. L'chad Dodi likrat kala, Shabbat nekabela. Likrat Shabbat lechu v'nelcha. Yihi mekor habracha. Merosh mikedem nesilcha. So ma'aseh v'machshavas tefila. V'chadodi likrat kala. Pnei Shabbat nekabela. V'chadodi likrat kala. Pnei Shabbat nekabela. Toreri, Iva ora, uri, shir naveri, kebor arai alai tefila. V'chadodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. V'chadodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Boi v'shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha u'b'tzova, toch emunei am segula, boi chala, lecha jodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. V'chadodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. I really can't tell if the YouTube is still going. The timer is still ticking. It's still showing me viewers, but it says connection unstable. Please wait. I'm watching on YouTube. Okay, Julie says it's working. Great. We continue then. So now we've opened up our hearts with that Shabbat Nigun at the beginning. We've lit our Shabbat candles, and we've welcomed in the Sabbath bride. And now we are ready to fully segue into our evening service with the Chatzi Kaddish on page 144. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah be'alma divrach yirtei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon u'vyomechon u'chayetecho beit Yisrael bagala u'vizman kariv ve'imeru amen yehesh merabah mevarach ve'alam u'al me'amaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'ale v'yithalal shemei tekudasha barechu leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma ve'imeru amen. And now we turn to the call to worship. Please prepare yourself for the Baruch Hu on page 146. Baruch Hu et Adonai we continue on page 149. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. You are creator of tide of time and light. You guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. Page 150. Beit Yisrael, Torah u'mitzvot, u'kim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al bin Adonai Eloheinu v'shachvenu, v'kreinu na'aseh b'chukecha, v'nismach b'divrei toratecha, u'mitzvotecha le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayeinu, ve'orech yameinu, u'bahem nege yom v'layla, nege yom v'layla. Ve'ahavat ha'al tasir, mimenu le'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev amo Yisrael, Ohev amo Yisrael. On pages 152 and 153, we have the Shema, followed by the Ve'ahavta. I invite you to prepare yourself for these words of Torah. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Shem Kevod, Malechuto Le'olam, Le'olam va'ed. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And all these words which I command you on this day shall be upon thy heart, shall be upon thy heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and thou shalt speak of them when thou sittest in thy house, when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up, and when thou risest up, and thou shalt find them for a Page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael. Page 160. Hashivenu Adonai Eloheinu v'shalom, v'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu v'chayim. Rosalenu sukat shlomecha, Rosalenu sukat shlomecha. Shelter us beneath thy wings, oh Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, oh Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us daily wrong from right, oh Adonai. Amen. 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 Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Page 162. Ve'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם. Ve'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam, oti le'olam. Ve'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה Adonai et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'aretz. Ve'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורותם ברית עולם. Ubayom hashvi'i Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash. Ve'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et Thank you for the woos, everybody. It's not quite the same as last week when we got to be in person together and I could hear your woos in real time, but I do appreciate them in the chat. I can feel you with me. We come now to the central portion of our evening prayer. Now that we're all revved up from Vishamru, we're ready for the Amidah. I invite you to prepare yourself for these sets of blessings, beginning on page 164. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Eternal God, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, El Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avod v'Imahot, U'Mevi Gula Livnei B'neihem, Le'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol Ata Rab Lehoshia. Morid hatal, mechalkel chaim bechesed, mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim, somech noflim verofeh cholim, umatir asurim, umekayem emunato lishenei afar, michamocha ba'al geburot, umidom elach. Melech meni to mechayeh umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman ata l'hachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai mechayeh hakol. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kadoshim b'chol yom yehallelucha selah. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. You may be seated. Page 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day, and may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. You are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. Let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai she'otcha levadcha b'yir'ah na'avod. When we behold the heavens, the work of your fingers, moon and the stars that you put in place, what are we humans that you are mindful of us, the mortals that you take note of us? You made us little less than divine, adorned us with glory and majesty. You gave us dominion over your handiwork, laying the world at our feet. How majestic is your name throughout the earth. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulechana'el lehodot. Page 178. Shalom Val Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Val Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech Adon Kol ha-shalom. V'tov beinecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Val Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Val Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Tasim Leolam. Baruch atah Adonai hamivorech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. We take a moment now for silent prayer. You might use the words on pages 180 and 181 or the meditations of your own heart. Yehiyu leratzon imrei fi vehagyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai tzuri v'goali. May the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, Adonai, our rock and redeemer. We turn our thoughts now to those who are ill, injured, recovering from surgeries, those in need of our prayers for healing. While I say the names on my list, I invite you to add any names in the chat for whom you would like to say the Mishaberach. Mary Kennedy, Rosalind Cantu, Mike Haug, Lori Perry, Nick Joliot, Ariel Batsluva, Rhoda Wessler, Skip, Kathy, and Jeffrey Brace, Rhonda Butler, Ricky Grant, Shoshana Bat Abraham, Minna Dornfeld, Juliette Origi, Leslie White, Ann Cohen, Charlotte Birch, Anita Ash, Joseph Matter, Daryl Swan, Steve McGrew, David Ray, David Harper, Doris Hudson Trujillo, Susan Smith, Mary Lou Manzelli, Gary Sullivan, and Kevin Kossoff, Herbert Levy, Paul Abel, and Scott Savage as well. The Mishaberach is on page 371, and we hold in our thoughts all those in need of healing of mind, body, and spirit. Mishaberach Avotenu Mikor HaBracha Imotenu. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us and let us say, Amen. Mishebeira imotenu mikor habracha la'avotenu. Was those in need of healing with Ruach Shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit. Let us say, Amen. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. This week's Torah portion, Parashat Naso, we read the ordeal of the Sota, the suspected adulteress. If a man becomes suspicious of his wife, regardless of any evidence to support his jealousy, he may bring her before a priest in the tabernacle, and they will perform a ritual together to determine her innocence. The central act of this ritual is that the woman must drink a concoction of water, ink dissolved from a piece of parchment that contains an incantation of sorts about the specific situation, along with some dirt from the tabernacle floor by the altar, which also surely contains blood and animal hairs and things from the sacrifices performed there. If she is innocent, nothing happens, and she will be cleared of all charges. She has no reaction to the potion, so to speak. If she is guilty, this beverage will cause her thigh to sag and her belly to distend, and it will damage her ability to conceive or to bear children in the future, thus rendering her a curse to a society that prioritized a woman's ability to give birth as her highest worth. Upon reading this, I was a bit reminded of the absurd assertion of lawmaker Todd Akin back in 2012 that abortion rights are not necessary even for extreme cases of rape and incest, because if it is a legitimate rape, the female body has ways to try and shut that whole thing down. At first glance, the Torah seems to support the idea that a woman's right to self-determination and reproductive freedom comes solely at her perceived innocence. If she has done wrong, she deserves the reproductive outcome, regardless of the effects those consequences may have on her own physical or mental health. But with a more discerning eye and understanding of historical context, this ritual was a move for reproductive rights and women's protection in its own time. Requiring a jealous husband to bring the suspected adulteress to the priest, by requiring the jealous husband to bring his wife to the priest, he had to rely on that priest and on God to sort out the situation. He could not simply beat her behind closed doors or kick her out of his home at will. If the potion proved the woman's innocence, there was no appeal process for him. He had to accept that he had been wrong, and that any child his wife might now give birth to was undeniably his responsibility. The Jerusalem Talmud comments on the ordeal. God compensates her for her humiliation. If she was barren, she will now conceive. If she gave birth painfully, she will now give birth with ease. If she used to give birth to unattractive children, she will now give birth to beautiful children. And even if she is guilty and is considered a curse, she is not stoned to death. The Torah is like a little vague. It looks like it's just about her, but the Babylonian Talmud assures us that once she drinks the potion, if she is guilty, the man who she cheated with, his thigh and belly will also sag, even though he doesn't have a uterus to fall out like hers does, which is the general understanding of what that means in the Torah. But he will also show those physical manifestations and be punished accordingly. So it is a step up from what could have been or what otherwise was at that, at the time. Now today, we thankfully live in an even more equitable world for people of all genders and reproductive abilities. But there is still a ways to go for real protection of reproductive justice and freedom. Next week, Tuesday, I will be joining the National Council of Jewish Women for their nonpartisan virtual lobby day. Although I'm a little disappointed to not be able to descend on the hill with hundreds of clergy from around the country, as sometimes these clergy lobby days entail, I am still proud to unite with all those same rabbis and cantors in spirit as we all meet via phone or Zoom with our senators and representatives from each state. We will be advocating on behalf of the Jewish values for Women's Health Protection Act, or WIPA, and the Equal Access to Abortion and Health Insurance, or EACH Act. I couldn't quite figure out why EACH is the acronym because it's missing some letters and there should be an extra A in there. I don't know, but that's what it's being nicknamed as, the EACH Act. WIPA ensures federal abortion access to protect Roe v. Wade in spite of many legislative attempts to curb abortion rights. Just this week, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed a heartbeat law prohibiting abortion as early as 6 weeks before many women even know that they're pregnant, which effectively criminalizes abortions in general because by the time they know they need one, it's too late. Meanwhile, the EACH Act would repeal the Hyde Amendment, which prohibits any government money from going toward abortion care. The Hyde Act means that people on Medicaid or other government-supplied health insurance policies, like military personnel, cannot access abortion care. And it also means that any federal medical aid cannot include abortion care, which then also leads to issues with properly funding many humanitarian aid organizations that also provide HIV treatment and prevention measures or any other kind of sexual health care, because a lot of those things are all done by the same agencies. And so if the government doesn't want to risk funding abortion, then it also isn't going to fund HIV prevention in Africa, which is a huge problem. So laws like the Heartbeat Bill and the Hyde Amendment tend to affect communities already living on the margins of society, such as people of color and people living in poverty. And these issues are deeply entrenched with the same issues of institutional racism and classism that our country has been grappling with deeply in this past year through questions of criminal justice reform or immigration policies. Further, as I have said before, many times, this is also an issue of religious liberty because Judaism teaches that abortion is acceptable in a fairly wide range of cases and even mandatory if the pregnant person's life is at risk. And one of the acceptable cases, in fact, includes the adulteress. Better that if she wants to keep it, that's fine. But there are responsa from the 18th and 19th century that if she wants to abort, that is her right, because otherwise that child will have to live with her shame, and that's not fair to that child either. So if she thinks that's going to be the best case to avoid, to move on, the rabbis say that's acceptable. So a woman should not need to prove her innocence or her life's worth in order to be granted dignity and health care. You can learn about these Jewish values on reproductive rights, as well as how to take action on these two pieces of legislation as a Reformed Jew through the Religious Action Center website or the National Council of Jewish Women's website. And if you go to the Rabbi blog page on Ner Shalom's website, where I post my sermons, you can see the whole URL that'll take you directly to the reproductive justice page, because of course the Religious Action Center and NCJW also do other important social justice work that you would have to do some clicking around if you just went to RAC.org or NCJW.org to find what I'm talking about. But you should also maybe do that, because there might be other social justice issues on that site that would intrigue you. Anyway, just as we see in this week's Parsha, that sometimes we need for leadership to step in to ensure protection for women's rights and bodies, we still need to urge our leadership today to further those protections. May we see a time when everyone has true bodily autonomy and full access to health care. In the meantime, may the Lord bless and keep you. May God deal kindly and graciously with you. May Hashem lift the Holy One's face toward you and give you peace. Amen and Shabbat Shalom. We turn now toward our concluding prayers. Aleinu is on page 586. And I invite you to prepare yourself for these blessings, this blessing. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gedula liotzer b'reishit, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu k'chol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, u'mishtachlalim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz, bayom hahu yihye Adonai echad, u'shemo echad. We turn our thoughts now to those who are no longer with us in body, but remain with us in spirit. This week marks a yahrzeit for Bernard Manning, Ida Geller, Gail Labino Flaherty, Molly Chasm, and Joseph Liss. And we are still within the year of mourning for Arizona Breeding, Fran Morona, Rick Grossman, Aura Alva Leon, Sharon Buell, Mona Mandel, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Patricia Michaels, Joe Davis, Kathleen Schindler, Jamie Bellitz, Neil Savage, Ann O'Neill, Bruce Schechter, Bernard Strassner, Ruth Sherman, Louis Aaron Honig, Jean Sullivan, Carolyn Rubel Magrum, David Nemero, Tom Lombard, and Marion Finkel. I forgot to invite you to put other names in the chat if you have them, but I don't see them now. So, and we also, of course, include in our thoughts all those who have been killed this past week in the violence in the Middle East, and we are so grateful for the ceasefire that went into effect today, and hope that it will hold. The Mourners Kaddish is on page 598. Mourners and those who wish to join them may rise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kari v'imru, amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei t'kudashah b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush b'chata v'nechemata. Ta'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlam araba bin shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimramav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimramav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru imru. Amen. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru. Amen. A few announcements before we do Motzi and Kiddush and wrap up. So this is your cue to also go get your wine and challah or whatever else. Tomorrow night, Havdalah will be streaming on Facebook and Instagram at 8 o'clock. Sunday, there's nothing happening. Religious school and adult ed are both officially over for the year. But on June 6th, we are coming back. That's 2 Sundays. We are coming back to the synagogue for a second cleanup day. And June 13th, that's 3 Sundays, we are having a yard sale at the synagogue. So, I don't think there's a form on the website yet, but there will be soon if you want to rent a space at the synagogue yard sale to sell your own stuff personally. We're charging a $10 fee to set up, to have your lot, and then you can sell to your heart's content. That's the 13th from 11 to 4. And the 6th is our second cleanup day from 1 to 4. June 27th is the general annual membership meeting. What else? Torah study continues the next few Thursdays at noon. We're going to wrap up. Our last one will be June 17th. That will be the last one for the summer. Next week, there will be no Shabbat or Havdalah service as it is Memorial Day weekend. So normally we call that a home Shabbat, but this past year and a half, every Shabbat has been a home Shabbat. So now I'm going to call it a airplane mode Shabbat. Thank you, Anthony. So I will not be streaming. I will be with my own family. You should light your own candles with your own family and enjoy a long weekend where maybe you're vaccinated and can actually travel this year for the long weekend. Woohoo! So that's what's happening. Things are starting to quiet down for the summer, but we'll still be your Jewish home in Prince William County when you need us. Oh, and one last thing. There's a Facebook fundraiser happening right now for our Gan Teva endeavors. We have gotten some good publicity. Things are moving along on that endeavor for us to open in September, but we do still need to do some fundraising. And the more members, it doesn't matter how much you donate, but the more members we can tell grant people that we already have supporting the more grant money we can get. Like, it looks good if we just have a higher percentage of support. So even if you give $1, please just contribute, so we can count you. So yeah, and follow the Gon Teva Facebook page and Instagram page that our member Angie set up this week. Okay, I think that's all of our announcements for now. Let us bless. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen. L'chaim. Somebody got into my challah already. We give thanks to God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. B'tei avon. Woo, I almost spilled my wine over everything. So this week's Torah portion also contains the priestly blessing. So for our closing song tonight, I'd like to sing you a little musical version of that. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May God shine God's face toward you. May God lift God's face toward you, and may God shine God's face on you in peace. Amen. And Shabbat Shalom.